Hello, my name is Evan Ruff, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of OXOS Medical. Imagine you're in an Antarctic expedition and one of your team members falls and hurts his leg. The decision you've got to make is this a broken leg, in which case there's a whole host of complications that could befall him if he tries to walk on it, or is it simply sprained and you can splint it and you can walk out of there? So everybody in this room has a digital camera in their pocket that's absolutely unreal. Carl Roentgen took the first X-ray in 1895, and in order for you to make the determination about this break, you've got to go to a hospital or an imaging center that could be 10,000 miles away. So advancing X-ray technology is the purpose of OXOS Medical. The company was co-founded by myself and Dr. Greg Kolovich, a practicing orthopedic surgeon. So the inspiration came from Greg when he was doing his fellowship at Mass General. He had been called in the middle of the night to reattach a hand, and it's a skeleton crew, nobody's happy to be there, and one of the big problems that he's got is he's got to fight the C-arm technology to try to get this hand back on with the skeleton crew by himself. This right here is the initial C-arm built by Philips in 1955. And this is the current C-arm technology that's used in hospitals today. This is the state of the art. So that thing is slow, room scale. You have to have specialized people to run it. It impedes the surgical workflow. It has a tremendous amount of radiation. And that's why Greg designed the MicroC. So this is the world's first handheld fluoroscope designed for treatment of the extremities for orthopedic surgeons and other operators. And it was designed to have faster, more accurate imaging. So the device itself is a 7-pound emitter with real-time feedback that allows the doctor to understand what they're imaging before they ever pull the trigger. And our design of our X-ray tube allows us to capture absolutely high-resolution, great digital radiography that is unparalleled in the current technology. The other benefit of uncoupling the whole mechanical relationship is that you can get lower radiation, far lower radiation than the current state of the art, 90% less in most cases. And the compact design of the device allows you to bring fluoroscopy to the point of care. So no longer do you have to go all the way to a hospital or an imaging center to get what is basically the standard of care for orthopedic and musculoskeletal injuries. Greg and I founded OXOS in May of 2016. We are headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. We have 18 full-time employees. We've raised $7.2 million in venture capital, and we are an ISO 13485 compliant medical device manufacturer. So removing the mechanical relationship between the emitter and the detector in a C-arm has created a lot of challenges that we've worked through and a lot of innovations that are unique to OXOS. The first one is our X-ray tube architecture. In the current design, what will happen is the machine will be on at a very low current for a long amount of time. And if you're hand-holding it, just like with your cell phone trying to hand-hold in like a dark room, that causes a tremendous amount of motion blur. So the OXOS tube design is sort of the opposite, where we do a very high current delivery for approximately 40 times faster than these machines. So not only does that allow you to handhold it, but it eliminates any motion blur or any bumping or movement from vascularity or bumping the table or anything like that. Oop. So the other innovation that we've built is this positioning system that tracks the orientation of the emitter in relationship to the detector in real time. So now that the emitter is free to move around, you want to make sure that it's safe, that all that X-ray emission is going to create medical images and not being pushed into the room or hitting the operators or other people. So this is one of our technologies where wherever you're pointing it, it will only fire if you're pointing it at the detector. The other big push was making this thing safe and easy to use. We didn't want to have specific X-ray technologists to be able to use this device only. It's designed to use much more like a digital camera so that you point it and pull the trigger, and it gives you the image that you're looking for and can automatically set a lot of those radiation levels. And then the fact that we started with this new architecture allowed us to build a cloud-based connected service so that all of the images can automatically be accessible for all the operators and the physicians. And it allows the physicians to share images securely from physician to physician and physician to patient. And it allows them to do annotation, pre-surgical planning, all using a lot more modern tools and interface than the legacy PACS servers that are available today. But the thing that having this cloud-based service allows us to do is to sort of solve the data problem with orthopedic imaging. So when you look at other specialties like cardiology, oncology, pulmonology, those are all done inside hospitals, and there's a very rich available library of images that are annotated for these more modern machine learning techniques to be executed against. But with ortho, because of the way that it has evolved through private practice and having individual systems that are siloed and don't talk to each other, there's no good image set that's annotated that's available for us to do more modern workloads against. So the largest one in America is Stanford University. That's 40,000 images. The largest one in the world is in Sweden. That's 240,000 images. But you know, there's just not enough Swedes to really make that a data set for all of orthopedics. So with our cloud platform, we're starting to work on AI workloads that are available in these other specialties. So that's things like automatic X-ray control. We do that today to help reduce that radiation. Things like view confirmation to allow us to expand into new sort of telemedical models. And then things like fracture detection, so that one day an OXOS device will be able to automatically triage your injury and tell you if you need to go to the hospital or the emergency room, or if it's simply a sprain instead of a break. Our intellectual property strategy is evolving, but what we've done is, you know, due to X-ray being 120 years old, there's not a lot of patentable material out there. But the positioning system is patentable. Nobody else is doing that except us, and we were issued a patent on that and then all of the associated things that we've been developing in September of 2018. We have also started going into this direct measurement technique for radiation reduction, and then we also have some very interesting things that are in the pipeline for surgical registration to help with the surgical robots that are really starting to be deployed inside of hospitals. Our compliance roadmap is pretty straightforward. We are a Class 2 medical device. We are eligible for a 510K and a third-party review. We're currently testing with Intertech for our 6601 compliance, and we're hoping to be cleared sometime in Q1 of 2020. So for space, how does this apply and why is this valuable? So in June, we were contacted by Marshall Flight Center seeing if they could get one of our devices to be studied for human factors for some of the projects that they're doing there. And as we get more serious about doing long-term space exploration into the moon and long-time people in ISS and then eventually onto Mars, getting these machines up there is going to be extremely hard to do. So a C-arm is 800 pounds. The MicroC is 17. So that's, at today's launch rates, that's $33 million versus less than $1 million. The other big problem with existing technologies is this radiation profile. So radiation for space travel is tremendously high. 2,000 millisieverts a year at the medium end, and that's a tremendous amount of radiation. It's known that 50 millisieverts a year can be really, really tough. So any way that you can reduce the amount of radiation is going to be very beneficial to space. A C-arm for a single image uses somewhere around 800 microsieverts, 750, and the MicroC is somewhere around 80. So that's a 10 times reduction in dose for a typical image. The other real big application for space is, of course, bone densitometry. In 2015, the agency flew a densometer made by TechShot, and that was a small device used to study bone densitometry for rodents in space. And it's been shown that astronauts are losing between 1% to 2% of their bone density per month in space. So not only does that another thing that hopes to reduce the radiation they're exposed to through imaging, but it makes them a lot more likely to have fractures and to have those musculoskeletal injuries that as we stay up there longer, we're going to need to be able to treat effectively. So back on Earth, what sort of markets are we looking at for MicroC and for OXOS? So our primary market is the surgical and ASC and hospital market. We compete with C-arms and mini-Cs on just head-to-head based on our radiation profile and our better image quality. That's about a $4 billion market. The other market that we're really excited about is the mobile market. So there are tons of situations out there where there are people that are familiar with fluoroscopy, but simply don't have a device that addresses their needs. So you're looking at ambulances, disaster response. We've had some interaction with the DoD for downrange military. And of course, the global medicine market is huge as well. That's a $10 billion market. And then finally, the market that it could be the biggest for us in total is this AI-enabled markets. So those are places where you need orthopedic intervention all the time, but you don't have the staff or the capability to make the judgments about what you've seen on your x-ray. So you can't read the x-ray. So through the application of these machine learning and AI models that are already being rolled out in these other disciplines, we think that we can address home health, rural medicine, retirement homes, and elder care, and that could possibly be our largest market. So what 2020 for MicroC is going to be getting our FDA clearance for our first device and getting that rolled out into the ASC and hospital market as quickly as possible, because we want to collect as much clinical feedback as we can to inform the new decisions of the new devices that we are working on for our next generation, and then applying to a lot of these other scenarios that we've talked about. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your over here. Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. Have you done studies to compare the viability or the credibility of your images compared to standard images that's been peer-reviewed?
So we haven't done any peer-reviewed studies other than through our clinical trial with Yale. So they were doing a follow-up for a tightrope procedure. So you take out a bone and replace it with an anchor and this elastic thing. And to do follow-up images for a cross-section of 100 patients for a view that is that delicate and that tight to do would be really hard using traditional machines, both from an image quality and an ergonomic standpoint. And they were able to do all those follow-up images in the office, and there was never any sort of indication that our quality wasn't absolutely fantastic.
Gotcha, but you haven't published or done any peer-reviewed?
We have not.
Yeah. When it comes to your reconstructive algorithms, are you using iterative reconstruction or filter back projection, or what are you doing?
For our reconstructive algorithms for
the images.
So as a 2D image, we're doing a lot of windowing and sharpness through basically iterative learning there. I'm not really sure that we do a lot of reconstruction. That maybe is more for like CT.
Got it. Then when it comes to dose registries, are you considering how you're going to partner with folks for that?
For dose?
For dose registries to keep up with how much radiation you're inducing into different patient populations.
Sure. So as part of the compliance for FDA, you have to show the dose as it's used on the machine, and then it's part of a study that goes into the PACS. So we work for that sort of thing just like any other fluoroscope.
Gotcha. The field of view, how big is it?
It's a 6-inch square, so same as a mini-C.
You stated your replacement for the C-arm and mini-C. How many injuries can your device adequately capture versus a C-arm or a mini-C?
Right. So a C-arm, you can do everything from
yeah.
angio down to whatever. We are really targeting distal extremity for our first device, so we can go up to 60 kV, which is enough to get through shoulders all the way to fingertips and knees all the way down to toes. A hip is a little tougher. It depends on the size of the patient. And so our next device will have more output so that we can address hip.
Can you go in a little bit more detail on your product roadmap going into the future?
Love to talk to you a little bit more about that as we go forward. But we do have some prototypes of the MicroC being used with essentially robotic surgical table. So you clip the table onto, it's just like a surgical table just for extension, and then inside of it, we have the device that is embedded in there, and we use our positioning system to track the pointing of the x-ray so that there is nothing under the table that the doctor needs to worry about. And we've got a lot of videos I'd love to show you in the breakout sessions.
Sure thing. A last question around protectability. I believe that you stated that it's the positioning system that's the key part of your IP?
Yes.
Okay. From a competition standpoint, so you're going against some pretty big players. Them leveraging other positional systems, I mean, how would you guys protect yourself against that?
Well, so the challenge is not just like line of sight, right? So when you're in a surgical environment, you've got the devices, but then they're covered, they're bagged, there's lots of tools around. So it's hard to do. And we feel like we're in a really good position patent-wise to protect the way that we do it currently, and we're pretty far ahead otherwise. And so we're continuing to evolve that strategy as well and make that patent even larger. But as it is now, I mean, it really is pretty nice. So when we were developing it and when it was under review, we had two challenges during the review process. And both of those were deemed not applicable to our technology, and it was issued. So we feel like we're in a really good spot.
There are other portable emitters on the market. How does yours compare with what else is out there? And what I always think of as the challenge is how narrowly you can focus it. So you seem to have addressed that focusing.
Right. So other portable emitters that are out there aren't really super portable. And when you have the emitter and not the detector, you really can't do a lot of the things that the OXOS devices can do. So if you're talking about like the dental devices, for instance, or is that what you're?
I was thinking of field emitters. I mean, there's a handheld device for lead paint.
Right, but not for orthopedics.
Medical.
Yeah. So orthopedics is a little different. And there's XRF and stuff like that, which the MicroC can also do. But what we're really trying to focus on is orthopedics. So our system doesn't really have any handheld competitors really at this point. And we think it's going to be really tough to follow us into the untethered emitter space because of our technology. Now, to address your question about how do you focus it, that is part of our patent portfolio, and we have a really, really interesting collimator that rolls and opens and closes so that we can adjust that X-ray field to meet the detector no matter where you're holding it and whatever the orientation is and how far away you are.
How high can you get the power?
Well, right now we do 60. We're shooting for 80 with our next device, and then we'll go from there. So NASA has a filamentless X-ray tube that if you're familiar with, I'd love to talk to you about.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Okay, let's talk about that.
I was wondering, on the portable system that you have, what would the energy requirements be for that system?
So right now it runs on 110 power, and we've got a battery that can run for about 4 hours on.
Lithium-ion?
It's just a COTS battery. Yeah, lithium-ion COTS battery. I think it's 10,000 milliamps.
Okay. And then what kind of temperature ranges would it operate in if you were in kind of an environment like you showed?
So right now I think right now we do like maybe 15 C up to 50 C, around there. I know that we haven't really done a lot of research into hardening the device. That's something that will come later once we get the specs from DoD and from you folks to see what we need to test against, like what does it really need to be able to do.
You covered the device well. You kind of tempted us with the AI taking all the views. Could you give me a feel for as far as the company goes, what's the timeline on having something that's a service or product?
For which workload?
For interpretation of
yeah. So that is a hard thing to say. It's going to depend a lot on how much data we can collect. We think that we'll be able to have, hundreds of thousands of images by the end of 2020, which will give us a great start on that. I will offer that the FDA has cleared the first AI triage for wrist fractures. So the art is out there, and when you look at what they're doing with like oncology and pulmonology, that's like we feel a much more difficult workload than fracture detection. So we're hoping that, within the next 3 to 5 years, we would be able to have that thing ready to go.
You mentioned Imogen, which is the company that does the fracture detection out of HSS.
Yeah.
Are you guys looking to partner with such companies, or are you looking to do it all in-house?
We haven't really gone down that road yet. The thing that we're really concentrating on is leveraging the OXOS positioning platform to do radiation reduction through our AI algorithms. That's really our first focus. And then as we move forward, we'll start getting into the view stuff and then some of these other workloads like images.
So have you considered a data security and a privacy and cybersecurity strategy around that, around all the images that you're going to be, I guess, owning?
Right. Having those images out there, and having the doctors be able to access it is like a HIPAA thing, and so we handle HIPAA just like any other cloud platform would handle HIPAA. And then everything that we do, all of our machine learning against is, of course, anonymized. So there's not any PII in that.
When have you done any studies on the scatter radiation to the operators?
Yeah, so a C-arm is huge amount of scatter, and then a mini-C is probably around 15 feet. We have seen ours be around a 6-foot cloud, just through our lab, testing our lab to make sure that we're not, the people down the hall aren't getting, going to start glowing one day. But so we're looking at about a 6-foot cloud for the MicroC. All right. Oh,
Thanks very much.
all right. Thanks, Tom.